Welcome to the series of everything you need to know about Python in simplest possible way. In the series of pattern printing, so far we have seen so many patterns. In this video, we will see this particular pattern and how we can actually print this particular pattern. So if you could carefully observe this pattern, in these diagonals we are having specific value. So if you could carefully see here, in this diagonal we are having 5, in this diagonal we are having 4, this diagonal we are having 3, 2 and 1. Like that we are getting a specific value in terms of diagonals. So let us go ahead and print this particular pattern and get these values. So we know that we cannot actually print the numbers in terms of diagonals, but we can actually print the values in terms of rows, and as a result we will get this pattern in terms of diagonals. So to do that, first we will divide this whole pattern into two different patterns, which is one is this particular above pattern. Later we will print this particular below pattern, and by combining both of them we can actually get this whole pattern. So to do that, I am doing first this above pattern, later we will print this below pattern. So in order to print this particular above pattern, I will take a variable rows and I will assign with 5, because in this pattern we are having 5 rows, right? Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are having 5 rows. For that reason, I am taking this rows as 5. So if you could observe this pattern, apart from these particular numbers, we are also having spaces here, right? You can observe here. In order to print these spaces, in order to keep track of these spaces, I will take a variable these spaces and I will assign with rows minus 1, because out of these all positions that is present here, one position is occupied by this number and remaining positions are spaces. For that reason, I am giving this one position with value which is rows for this number, and remaining are spaces. For that reason, I am taking rows minus 1. Later what we need to do is that in order to generate these many number of rows, I will use a loop. So that is what we generally do in order to generate a specific values, right? So by using this particular loop, we can actually generate them. So for that reason, I will take a for loop for I in range. Now we need to generate a range of values. So the question is, what are the range of values that we are going to generate? So we need to generate the range of values that helps us to print this particular all values. So for that reason, I am taking this particular diagonal, which is this right side, which is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So by using these values 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, later we can actually print these whole values. For that reason, I am starting with rows, is what the value is 5 here. So I am starting with rows and going till the value of 0, because here we are having 1, right? So for that reason, I am mentioning 0. This range function will stop at 1. After that, I will use this minus 1, so that by mentioning this, the range function, the range of values will be decremented on each iteration. So in this for loop, what I will be doing is that in order to know what values we are having in I will just print. So as we have expected, we are having the values as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which are present in this particular right diagonal here. So what we need to do by observing this particular pattern here is that in this pattern, we are starting with value 5 and going till the value of I here. You can observe and compare this value of I and with this particular values which is in this right diagonal, and we are starting with value 5 and going till the value of I. So that is what we need to do in this next step. So as we are having these values on each row, we need to do a one more for loop and to generate these many values, because these are repeating on each row, right? So for that, I will use a one more for loop for j in range. As we have known, we need to start with 5 and go till the value of I. I will start with rows and go till the value of I minus 1, because by mentioning this I minus 1, it will stop at the value of I. So that is what the functionality of range. You can check that range in my previous videos. So later what we will be doing is that inside of this particular for loop, instead of printing this I I will print the value j here. Now if I execute this, so we can able to get the values as 5, 5 4, and 5 4 3, 5 4 3 2, 5 4 3 2 1. Those are the exact values that we are having in this particular pattern. So later what we need to do is that we have got the values. The only thing we need to do is that we need to arrange these values so that we can actually get the whole pattern. So for that what I will be doing is that I will use this end parameter with a single space, because by default this print having this end parameter with new line character, but that is not what we wanted. For that reason I have mentioned a single space. By using this we can actually get everything in a single line. So here we are having everything in the new lines, right? So for that what I will be doing is that as and when completion of this inner for loop, I will print a print. So by simply printing this print, we can actually generate a new line. So now if I execute this, we can get the values, everything in a new line. So exactly like this. But the only thing we need to do is that we need to print these spaces before these values. So if we could print them, we can actually get the whole pattern. So to keep track of that spaces, we are having the spaces variable. The only thing is that we need to print that spaces. So where we need to print is that before this particular values. For that reason, as and when we enter into this outer for loop, I will use this print statement in order to print those print spaces. For that, I am using this space and I am multiplying the spaces variable so that we can get how many number of spaces we are having, and those spaces will be reflected on the pattern. And I will also use this end as nothing, because if you don't use this end as nothing, by default it will take a new line character. That is not what we wanted. So after this, after completion of this inner for loop, if you could compare this pattern, the spaces are keep reducing on each iteration. For that what I will be doing is that I will reduce these spaces on each iteration. So now if I execute this, so we can able to get the pattern. That is what exactly that we are having this above pattern. So now we need to generate this below pattern. So in order to generate this below pattern, we will follow similar procedure that what we have followed in the above. So for that I will use a for loop to generate a range of values and to generate this particular rows here. So for that I will use a for loop for j in range. So we need to generate a range of values. As we have taken this particular 5 4 3 2 1 as a base to generate this particular rows, we need to take some base to generate this particular below pattern. So now if we could compare this pattern, we can actually use this diagonal as a base to generate this pattern, right? So 4 3 2 1. So that is what I will be doing now. I will take a variable rows minus 1, because this rows having 5. So by mentioning rows minus 1, we will start with 4, right? So that is what expected here. So later, by from these rows, we need to go till the value of 1. So for that, I will mention a 0 here. So by mentioning 0, the range function will stop at 1. So that is what expected. And later, I am mentioning minus 1, because we need to decrease these values, right? So that is the reason I have mentioned minus 1. This to know what values in this particular k, I am using k here. So if I print k here, we can able to get the values 4 3 2 1. So by comparing these k values and this particular pattern here, the k value is starting and going till the value of 1 on each row. So that is what we need to do next. So for that what I will be doing is that as this is repeating on each rows, I will use one more for loop. So that is what we generally do when we have repeated statements, right? So for that reason, for L in range. So now I will generate range of values. As we know, these values are starting with 4 and going till the value of 1. So that is what I will do now. I will start with k and go till the value of 0, so that it will stop at 1, and on each iteration I will reduce with minus 1. So inside of this for loop, instead of printing k, if I print l, we can able to get these values, which is 4 3 2 1 3 2 1 2 1 and 1. So those are the exact values that we are having this particular pattern. So we just need to arrange them to get the whole pattern. So for that I am mentioning this end parameter with a single space, and I will also print this for new line character. If I execute this, we can able to get everything in this particular format, but we haven't got the exact pattern. For that I will use and print this particular spaces here to get those spaces, and I will use this end parameter with nothing. So now if I execute this, we still didn't get this. So we need to modify these spaces to get this pattern, because if you observe this pattern, the spaces are keep increasing on each iteration, right? So that is what I will be doing now. Spaces less equal to 1, so that the spaces will get increased. So even when I execute this, we don't get the pattern. So I'm executing this, we didn't get the exact pattern. There is some misconfiguration happening here. The reason is that we are actually using these spaces that what we have used in the above pattern. That is fine. But the problem is that these spaces having a value that is printing I am here, so this space is having value -1, but we want these spaces to start with 1. So those are the 1 spaces in this particular below pattern. So we need to modify this spaces value so that we can able to start with 1 space. So the difference between -1 and 1 is 2. -1 to 0 and 0 to 1. So for that reason, we need to increase these spaces to 2 so that we can able to get the value. So spaces plus equal to 2. Now if I execute this, so we can able to get the exact pattern that what we have expected here. So right. So I hope you have understood this logic to get this particular pattern. If not, I will sincerely suggest you to go through the video once again so that you will understand clearly. So next what we need to do is that we need to take these particular rows dynamically from the user. So based on the user input, we will print this particular pattern. So for that, I am mentioning int input. I am asking user to enter rows. So now if I execute this, so it was asking to enter rows. If I give the value, let's say 7 here, so we can able to get the values 7 in this diagonal, 6 diagonal, and every single number with these particular diagonals here. So now if I give one more number, let's say 9 here, so still we can able to get this pattern in terms of diagonals. So I hope you have found this video interesting. If that is true, hit the like button. In the next video, we will see how we can actually generate this particular pattern. If you could compare this pattern with this pattern, we are starting with a higher value in the diagonals and going till the lower value. In this pattern, we are starting with a lower value in terms of diagonals and going till the higher value. So we will see that in the next video. So to stay updated, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications to all, so that whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. So thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.